All right, guys, I'm super excited about our guest today. I think it's going to be really helpful, really tangible, nuts and bolts kind of stuff. So I have here Richard Gandy. He's managed artists, he's booked tours. This guy has almost 2 decades of experience in the record industry. So I'd love you to welcome Richard, and let's hear a bit about you, Richard.
Hey Brock, thanks man. It's good to see you.
You too.
Yeah, things are good. It's we've been doing this for a little over 17 years now, I guess, and primarily work with artists who are not on labels. So guys who have just kind of bootstrapped it from the beginning or were with labels and then have decided to do their own thing now. So lots of tours and lots of management stuff, but also some label services type things since we're kind of running quarterback in the whole operation. So we've been able to work with some fun people and great people, and it's been a blast for sure.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned artist services. Definitely want to get into that at some point. But when I think about the independent artist community, I think there's so many that are struggling with like making their mark, getting the fans, being successful, really, even just filling the bank account, right? I know you know something about that and how to help that process. So I'm curious, just when you think about the artist community and the different paths towards success, like what are some of the initial like thoughts that just really hit you, like, man, if you want to be successful, like these are things I see missing all the time, or these are things that I see that you could do right now. Like let's jump into that. Like what are some of those things that stand out?
Yeah, I think there's a million ways to do it. So there's not one specific path, obviously, but starting out with what you mentioned on one of your other videos, that this is a ton of work. And if you don't eat, sleep, and breathe it, then there's a lot of ways to make better money and get, more followers on Instagram or whatever that it is. So I think you've got to come with really just a passion for music and as a student of music to maybe you don't have a degree, but definitely studying like all the catalogs of artists that you love and putting together something that's unique and really means something. Of course, I like the music that we work with, artists that we work with. I love their music because I'm drawn into what they're saying, in
Mm.
addition to just having great melodies and good chord progressions and good vibes in the song. It's actually like the message that they're bringing is relating to people and connecting with people. And I think that's why music is the universal language, that we didn't know that we needed to hear a certain song, internally until we heard it and experienced it and then really felt connected to it.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're not really invested in trying to put out something that is different and that is trying to relate to people, and you're not laying awake at night wondering how do I get this chord progression to go into that and like really eat, sleep, and breathe it, then it's I don't think you're going to enjoy it. You've got
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have the work ethic that's there
Yeah.
because you have the goal of really getting this music out.
Yeah.
I generally think across the board, like the younger artists that are kind of coming up now are having a difficult time, maybe more than some of the older artists who the older artists came in when the game was different, where you
Mm.
kind of you trusted people that around you to kind of help shape where you were going to go. And
Yeah.
now there's so many useful tools for independent artists that they feel like they don't need anybody. They can do it all themselves. And that's actually true. You could totally do it all yourself,
Mm.
but to have a team around you that helps you kind of navigate the dirty business and the choppy waters and all the the different
Yeah.
avenues here is very important. I
Yeah.
really think it comes down to the work ethic part of it, that
Mm.
not just walking in and expecting to, as an example, we get emails pretty often like I really felt drawn to songwriting last month, and so I wrote five
There it is.
songs. They're really great. We're looking for a manager to come in and like blow us up. And maybe that's a scenario that works. I don't know, but across the board, I think you've got to put in the time, the grit, the day to day, and on the touring side, so many artists want to go out and tour a headlining date. Maybe they've got some success on social media. They've got 20,000 followers, got 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and they feel like now it's time to go out on tour. And I just feel like if you've never played Tulsa, Oklahoma, what's the point of playing it on a Tuesday night if no one knows who you are?
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd
Yeah.
be better served to go in and open for an act and kind of pay your dues that way. So anyway, kind of rambling now, but I feel like it comes down to the drive, the work ethic, and then having people around you that can help.
Man, you hit on so many points that I feel like are just so critical that people are kind of glossing over because like you know, I'll get calls and it's like, "Hey, I started last month." And you know, there's no shame and like you got to start where you start, right? And I know that's not what either of us mean, but it's also like, man, this is a tough industry, right? It's tough to break into, it's tough to be successful, it's tough to mentally feel like you're going to make it, right? Definitely after a month it starts kicking in. And so I want to go back to a couple things you said because I feel like they're so critical. Like you mentioned lyrics, and like for you specifically, the songwriting process and the lyrics pulling you in and meaning something. How important is good songwriting when you're talking about success as an indie artist? Is it something like I can just get some catchy hooks in there and I'm good? Or is it something like, no, lyrics actually will make a difference? Tell me about the lyric piece.
I definitely think there's artists that are the flash in the pan. Their music doesn't mean anything. It just had a cool feel and vibe. It was right current with the time. And then we never hear from them again,
Yeah.
or they play the same song,
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
next 30
right.
years. So I think there's a lot of terrible music, as you mentioned in one of your other videos. There's a lot of noise out there.
Mhm.
I think I had read that Spotify has 60,000 songs going up a day. And so, like, what are you saying that hasn't already been said? Like, how are you
Yeah, yeah,
contributing to this conversation? And I feel like, particularly in a world where there's a lot of just negative things that are going on and terrible news all the time and all of that, is there something that you can bring that speaks to where people are, that helps them have hope for something beyond where the situation that they're in?
yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily have to have some ties to some sort of greater system of belief. It could just be you're writing a song about, you going on a road trip with your friends and you're just talking about
Sure.
friendship and like being together and that kind of thing. So I feel like the more intentionality behind lyrics,
Yeah,
it brings a crowd or a fan base or listenership of people who feel connected to you as an artist, not just connected to the music. And
yeah,
that actually ends up, I think, bringing longevity in a career because people feel like that they can connect to you on a personal level, even though they've never met you, but through your
sure.
lyrics, they feel really connected. And I can feel that way with James Taylor. I've never met James Taylor, but it's
Yeah,
like there's something about his lyrics. I can just feel like we've sat and had coffee many times, even though we
yeah,
never have and never will.
totally. So on that piece, I've often wondered this for myself, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. How important do you think authenticity in the songwriting process is, as opposed to like, because you mentioned, look, you can be talking about just a road trip with your friends, and that could be meaningful. Does it matter if it's actually coming from the heart or from experience, or is it like, hey, a great songwriter can write about the moon and they've never been? Like, tell me about what your thoughts on that sort of authenticity angle in the songwriting process. Does it matter?
Yeah, there's two different sides of that. There's the songwriter and then there's the performer, and as you have seen, it's like, it's particularly in country or even Christian music where they have the songwriter and a lot of times the performer who puts the track out is actually not the songwriter. And so to say that they wouldn't be authentic because they didn't write the song, they're just singing it, probably doesn't work. But to have the original songwriter to come through with stuff that means something to them, even if it is just to bring a happy feeling, to set the scene for a day at the beach or something, all the way to I really have struggled with depression, and this song that I've written has given me some way of expressing hope through the middle of it. I think authenticity is a big deal, and I
Yeah.
think that's what lasts a really long time. Of course, we've seen catalogs of music that doesn't seem to have like really deep
Yeah.
rooted
Yeah.
lyrics, but we're still drawn into the story. We're still drawn into whatever they are selling in terms of the artistry.
Yeah.
And so for me, the time that you take to put in the lyrics and how that you're communicating that through the feel of the song is, we've never needed more authentic songs than we do right now in the middle of all this noise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it makes me think like about social media, like the availability of tools, like you mentioned earlier. There's so many tools now to get your stuff out there. And I wonder, I poll a lot. I poll myself a lot. I just poll, and I mean POLL, trying to get just maybe a heartbeat on what's happening in a particular space. when you think about what you just said about that authenticity, do you think that that's lacking right now in sort of the indie artist world? Do you feel like it's there? Like, what are your thoughts on the existence of authenticity by and large right now in the music industry?
I think pop and rap music overall has changed the way that a lot of artists approach the industry, in that it's larger than life, it's bigger than can ever be obtained, and that's its own system that works for those types of genres for the most part.
Yeah.
But I'm always drawn to the people that write music and the artists, even if I'm never going to actually hang out with these music icons that seem relatable. And those to me are the guys and people who write music that have chosen the path to be an underdog. I think that is to me way more appealing than the larger than life, the Kiss who has all of the pyro on the stage. It's super fun, but I'm not drawn into a Kiss record the same way I would be drawn into an artist that's actually like singing about something that I relate to, and then it's coming across, particularly social media or at their shows,
Yeah.
or what all their branding is. Are they someone that you feel like you could sit down and have a cup of coffee with? I'm drawn to that kind of an artist, you know.
Yeah, honestly, I think we all are, Richard. I
Mm.
feel like whether we recognize that in ourselves, I mean, yeah, who wouldn't love a good Kiss show, right? It's big, it's like crazy, Ozzy, whatever. Like
Yeah,
you feel like this is
yeah.
just wild. But I think the reality is we're all looking for personal connection. And I personally do believe that part of the pathway to success is recognizing, like identifying and recognizing how you could legitimately connect with an audience, not just to get them excited, because excitement, I think it's like the flash in the pan thing that you said earlier. It's like it doesn't last, right? It's boom, it's there and it's gone. Or you end up just repeating that formula over and over and over. But I think the artists, to me, the artists that have that longevity are the ones that just keep investing in that process of trying to connect with an audience, trying to be authentic. And then I want to transition a bit to the work ethic, because you brought that up. What does that look like in a practical sense? Because like if I hear work ethic, I know what I think when I hear that. Like they're developing their craft. If they play an instrument, they're spending the time practicing. They don't hit a point where they're like, I'm too big to practice. I think the top artists in the world practice regularly. I don't know if the rest of the indie community realizes that the top of the game, they're practicing, they're rehearsing constantly.
Hmm.
So to me, what does work ethic practically look like for an indie artist right now? What is it like give me the nuts and bolts of what that actually means to you.
I think I mean, this is a job. You've got to treat it as if you're going to work, you're clocking in, you're going to spend the time investing in your career, and then clock out and go home, you know, and
Yeah,
treat
yeah,
it more like that, as opposed to I'm going to wait and see if a single catches on TikTok, and then all of a sudden I'm going to try to ride the wave.
yeah.
To me, it's more about well, the artists that we work with generally are in the singer-songwriter genre. And so they are a single person who is the entire entity for the most part. Now they have people around them, they've got people supporting them, but in terms of the outward facing, the fans are not recognizing that they've got a bunch of team members behind them. They just see this one person. So the work ethic could be like, you're going to have to spend all day working on crafting this email that's going to go out to your email database, and putting together, you know, different social media posts, because you don't have a band of 5 guys, you know, that are all going to
Yeah,
take turns doing different stuff. We've got to approve the merch designs. We've got to work with all the different ins and outs of art for the releases and things like that. So it's not just show up and play music. There's this whole behind the scenes thing that if you do it right, no one ever knows you put that much effort into it.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
it was Steven Tyler that said, or it was Steven Tyler that said, you'd be surprised how expensive it is to look this cheap. And I love that quote. It's like, to pull it off and make it look like it was with
Yeah,
ease meant there was a
yeah,
ton of work that went behind it.
yeah.
And so definitely on the craft side and the recording and getting the music to a really high caliber is extremely important. But then you've got all the other stuff of maintaining and of course the business side and the contracts and all the long never ending tasks that are there. I think you've got to have the mentality that this is going to be like a job, and treat it like a 9 to 5 or whatever that your hours are throughout the day, and not treat it as I'm going to sleep till noon,
Yeah, yeah.
play guitar for a few hours, and then walk around the park.
Well, and it's funny you say that because I feel like sometimes that the model for indie artists is kind of the ones that are already successful in that rock and roll lifestyle, which you have to work to get there, and then you can enjoy some of the fruits of your labor. I mean, to me, but that's the model. Like, and that model infuses down to the masses of the indie community where they're like, oh, that's how it looks. Like,
Mhm.
I wake up at noon, maybe, mess around on the guitar for 15 minutes, go to lunch, mess around 10 minutes more, and then call it a night. Like that's not work, right? Like we
Right.
have to go to work, we have to show up, we have to develop ourselves. And I feel like to me, if you hit the nail on the head on that work ethic piece, I feel like there's a lot of people that actually probably would work. They just don't realize what the work is. Like, what does it mean when you say work? And you hit like that email campaign, that merch
Mhm.
approval. I feel like this is something that you and I like see eye to eye on all the time because we get calls or we have conversations where we realize these people aren't really seeing that you're a business owner, and as a
Mhm.
business owner you have oversee all these different aspects, right? Product development, artist like all the things that we would see, that you can't just play an instrument and sing anymore. You got to write well and you got to invest in your craft. You have to put in the time with the instrument, you have to put in the time with the vocals, but on top of all that, the thing that I think kills a lot of indie artists is like, what do you like, I have to worry about social media. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't tell you how many times an artist will call me and be like, I hate social media. Like, I don't even want to be on there. And in my mind, I'm trying to like devise a plan of like, well, how do I help you when you don't want to use a major tool today, like a major effective, potentially effective, certainly available tool today. Actually,
Mhm.
what do you think on that? Like, do you think an artist has to use social media to be successful today? Is that a 100% certainty?
I would say it's very rare if you don't. That doesn't mean all the artists are the ones actually posting and doing it themselves. If you can bring somebody around you who loves it
Yeah.
and really enjoys the algorithms and the analytics side and everything, like if you've got friends that do that, then ask them to partner with you, or certainly if you can hire it out, then that's great. But it's still got to be in your voice. And I think just to shut it down and say you're not going to do it is, I'm not saying it won't work, but it's hard to get the word out these days.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So how important is I wake up, today I'm gonna be an indie artist and maybe it's legit. Like I just that thing, that light bulb went off, that trigger happened where I'm like, I know what I was meant to do with my life. So I'm serious. I'm gonna put in the work, I start writing. How important, you mentioned like, hey, maybe you can bring somebody on that does love social media or does love to do that. How important is it to build a team around you to be successful? Like, I would love to know how important it is in your mind, and also what that team starts to look like so that an indie artist can say, oh, I wasn't really thinking, like I need some people. What are they going to do? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think the it's hard to vision only on your own. I think you've got to have people around you that help you see one thing that's coming up that maybe you're not noticing, but also be able to expand the vision further than what you could ever push it yourself.
Yeah.
And so having somebody in your corner who's going to help and not only paving the way, but deciding the direction and helping kind of form where you're going is really essential. Otherwise, you're pretty short-sighted and limited.
Yeah.
On a practical side, I think you have people on your team that are negotiating for you. It's hard to negotiate for yourself.
Yeah.
You come out looking like a jerk if you're asking for more money on anything.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
somebody's doing it for yourself, or not for yourself, but for you, it's actually it looks like a very kind of formal setting, like more of a team
Yeah.
instead of just a guy with a guitar or something.
Totally.
Um, I think people get burned out very quickly that don't have a team, people around them that are helping and lifting the burdens that weigh them down. Because most of the time, the creative mind does not like doing all of the spreadsheets and the ins and
Yeah.
outs of like
Yeah.
web design and stuff. So
Yeah.
to have people around you that have your best interest in heart at heart and are actually invested in seeing your success
Yeah.
and invested in like lifting burden from you, the things that you hate. It doesn't mean you're going to love everything that you do, but
Right.
if you're buried in spreadsheets all day, then that's not going to be helpful for anybody, because you need to be writing and like out there promoting and these kind of things. So I would say that it's more than likely you'll get burned out without having a team around you. And then I also think you'll probably get taken advantage of at a certain point if you don't have somebody protecting you, somebody in your corner, particularly somebody who's gone a little further down the road than you've ever gone, to be able to say, there's potholes down this road, we should avoid this and move in that direction, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. So I 100% agree with everything you said. I'm curious what your experience has been like in contrast to mine. I'll get some calls from artists where they want me to be the first member of their team. And sometimes it's an odd choice. Like, why would you pick a lawyer first? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of other things you could be doing. But in my case, I realize a lot of times it basically comes out of, well, they got somebody that offered them up a deal, and so they need somebody to look at the deal. So it's the first time they've ever looked at sort of building that team, because they're like, I got something in front of me I don't understand, so I need a lawyer, right? A lot of times I think, and I've had artists that come and they've already hired like PR team, like a PR company, and I'm like, wait, that like of course I would never say this, but I mean that's weird to me that your first member of your team would be a PR agency, right? But I get it, because I feel like artists, and again, this is my view, I feel like artists a lot of times are putting out fires, and that's how they build their team.
Mm-hmm.
They start their team because a fire needed to be put out. Oh, we need a lawyer for this, rather than a strategic growth. So in your mind, is there a this person, then this person, then this person to like that team? Or is it like what actually I'm just asking you, like what are your views on sort of the order of that team building?
Mm. I think if you're really business minded already, then you can do a lot on your own for a while
Yeah.
and kind of outsource certain parts of the career that you don't know,
Yeah.
such as you've got to have a booking agent. Like if you go out and do it on your own, that's fine. But at a certain point, like I said, it's going to be too hard to negotiate for yourself.
Mm.
Not going to understand the routing, not going to understand how all the tour buses work and all the crazy parts. So you've got to have an agent who's out there representing you and trying to get you on bigger tours and these kind of things.
Yeah.
So to me, that would be essential, is to have, even if you were still managing yourself, is to have a booking agent out there booking the shows. I think a manager and an attorney are the other two part of a team that is essential, depending on your growth. As you grow, you've got to have people that, as you just mentioned, are looking at contracts and helping you figure out what direction to go. To me, the marketing, the PR, the um, any of those kind of things are always last, in my opinion, because you're still building. And if you bring on someone too early, I know that's kind of like cart before the horse, but if you bring on too early and they don't have anything to work with, then you're actually paying them more than what you could get out of it anyway, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I definitely think having an agent, a manager of some sort, somebody on your team that's looking out for you, and then an attorney to look over the contracts and help kind of form. If you don't have an entity, you've got to have somebody to put together an entity for you. You've got to have all of these kind of ins and outs there. And then once you've grown enough to where you can't use QuickBooks anymore, then I think bringing on a business manager and accountant is really important, particularly if you've got more than one person that you're paying out, or whether that's royalties or band members. You've got to have somebody who's kind of overlooking all the money and divvying everything out.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So when you look at, because I think we started this conversation with, hey, here's Richard, and we kind of jumped into some of the mechanics, but I feel like a lot of indie artists, for me, my experience is they just don't always have a good grid. They don't always have a good context of who's who and what's what, because they jump in and, like I said, they're solving problems or trying to overcome obstacles. So I want to get into just two more things pretty much before we close out. This has been an awesome conversation so far. Um, when you look at what you do specifically, you and your team, right, your company, how do you see yourself and your team propelling an artist further down the road? Like what are the mechanics of how you're helping an artist? Like if I, I know we're joking, like a month ago, I started a month ago, but even 5 years ago, like I've been going and I'm just hitting roadblock after roadblock. No one cares about my songs other than my family and a couple of friends, whatever. Like when I bring somebody like you on the team, or you and your team on my team, what actually happens, or what's the goal to happen with that move?
We are not we have this system and then we grab an artist and plug them into this, and this is the only way that it works. Though there's plenty of people who had great success doing it that way.
Yeah.
With an artist, they take it and say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and this is it. You've got to fit into this mold. We actually come in a little different approach, which is we want to come in and free people up to so that they can play and enjoy and connect with fans and
Yeah.
all of that. And we would handle the stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And part of that is knowing the path to go and constantly trying to figure out these algorithms and
Yeah.
constantly trying to figure out a game plan of a bigger picture, a bigger story that you would tell.
Yeah.
And so I think bringing on somebody that's in your corner, what it would look like is them giving you some direction on an audit, so to speak, on what you're already doing.
Mm.
Here's some things that I feel like are working. Here's some things that we could maybe look at adjusting, whether that's the frequency of social media posts or whether that's the frequency of releasing music. There's actually a lot of strategy behind that, whether that's collaborations, as you mentioned in a previous video. It's these different things that are looking at how what you're doing is shaping how you're moving forward. And so if you've got somebody who's helping you kind of shape that, I think that's a big deal. And then
Yeah.
someone who's protecting you, somebody who is going out and just making sure you're not getting taken advantage of. And to me, like on a practical side, if you've got your buddy who's been printing t-shirts for you for the past 5 years for $20 a shirt, I'm sorry, that's a terrible rate. And how would you know that without having somebody come alongside
Right.
to, give you a different perspective there? Same thing on the publishing side or anything else. It's like, how do you know that your publishing admin is charging a good rate because you have nothing to compare it to?
Yeah.
Or how do you know that you're getting paid a fair amount for this feature on a song because you've never done it before, and things like that, that I feel like you bring somebody on who has done it before can help you.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like for a person like me, if I was an indie artist, I'm thinking all those issues are too big for me to worry about. I just need to make music and kind of get up on the next level. But it sounds like everything you described, you're solving practical problems that I'm facing, even if I don't realize I'm facing it, right? If I get
Sure.
into these negotiations and I don't know what's what, I mean, we don't know what we don't know. So what I heard you say is like we help with identifying like even what's what, right? Asking the right
Mm.
questions. And I mean, I feel like I had a friend tell me a long time ago, he's like, Brock, you sell steak, you don't sell sizzle, but people want to buy sizzle, not steak. And that was just a crazy comment to me because I'm like, who doesn't want the steak? Like, you know what I mean? So I feel like that right there is just kind of weird as a concept because I want to know if I'm missing something, what are the practical steps to get there? So I think you've outlined those.
Mm.
Well, look, man, I just appreciate our time so much. I want to ask you one last question because I know, Richard, you spent so many times helping so many artists like figure this stuff out that no one's thinking about, that we don't want to worry about, that it's kind of behind the scenes, and you're always just making the artist look amazing. Meanwhile,
Mm.
you and your team are behind the scenes, just working everything that needs to be worked. So I know for certain that you've seen some secrets, some like, I just don't think artists get this piece. What's one of those like big secrets, big ideas that you feel like, man, I wish the whole indie community would know this because I know this, but I just see that it's mostly missed. What's that thing?
Hmm. I would say telling a story. And what I mean by that is the way that you release your music. If you just record a song on a Tuesday and put it up on a Friday, you've done a terrible job of telling the story. I
Mm,
think if you can treat everything that you put out there as a way to connect with people, as a way to try to draw people into what you're doing, you've got to have a larger story that you're telling across the board. So if you wrote a song about going on a road trip with your friends, then 2 weeks before you release the single, put up a photo of you and your friends and say, I wrote this song about this time. It really meant something to me. It's coming out in 2 weeks. Here's a pre-save link. I hope you enjoy it. And it takes you back to your road trip. And then a week before, create a road trip playlist and put it on social media. Here's some songs I really loved when we were driving down the road.
Yeah.
My song will be on this playlist on Friday. And then when the track comes out, thanks for listening. I hope you drive around the day and turn it up loud in your car. And then after that, it's maybe you release a bumper sticker with
Yeah.
a lyric on there. It's just pointing back to the single. And then you invite a collaborator to come on, another songwriter or something, to do an alt take or something that is a different version of the same song. It's telling this story of multiple ways to ask people to go listen to it, instead of asking them outright, listen to my song, listen to my song, listen to my song.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
finding a creative way to tell a story in a way that seems relatable. And
Yeah.
I think that has worked. Anytime it seems like there's a behind the scenes or a story behind why the song was written
Yeah.
or whatever, everybody's drawn into that. And so if
I
you
love
can
that.
start every single thing that you do with a greater story instead of just releasing music, to me, I feel like you're going to get a lot more success out of it.
I love that, man. I agree. And I think that's a big piece that's missing. Just the storytelling. It's so far beyond the lyrics. It's even in the way you release, like you said. Well, man, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. I know that this video will be so helpful for artists, and I know you're rooting for them as much as I am. So thanks a
For
lot, man.
sure. Thank you, Brock, man. I appreciate it. Good to talk to you.